fresh dudes right out of boot camp, you know, and Iraq at this point in time, it's not too kinetic. Not a whole lot going on. I remember we leave February 19th, 2004, and I've got my girlfriend here, I've got my family, my mom and dad, brothers and sisters, all saying goodbye to us. And I look around and all these Marines have smiles on their faces, all these families have smiles on their faces, everybody's hugging, and I'll see you in 6 or 7 months, and it's this happy-go-lucky event. You know, we hop on the buses, bounce out to March Air Force Base, we're gone. And get over to Ramadi after we trucked up there from Kuwait, and Golf Company and Echo Company take over the combat outpost, which is like heart of the city. 300 meters wide, maybe 400 or 500 meters long of a base. It's a tight little freaking base. Initial reports, like intelligence reports, is like, what we're expecting is we're gonna get hit by a 4 to 6 man cell. They're gonna attack you with small arms, AK-47, machine gun, maybe some RPGs, and they're gonna hit you and they're gonna withdraw. They're gone. Hit and split. And so that's what we're ready for. But we relieve the Army, and everything that they've been dealing with in the last like 6 or 7 months there was they've had like 50 casualties. They haven't even taken a KIA to my knowledge. I hope I'm not wrong about that. I guess I'm speculating. But based on everything that we're knowing, we're not that worried about this deployment until March 13th, where Corporal McPherson, Zimmerman, Harrison, Graves, they're in a Humvee with 4th Platoon. And the Mujahideen, they had taken a bicycle and stuffed it full of explosives. They detonated this thing as this Humvee rolls by. And reports that we are hearing as 3rd Platoon, you know, we live like right across this little dirt strip from 4th Platoon. McPherson loses his lower jaw. Zimmerman takes a piece of rebar to the eye, takes out his eye, takes out a small portion of his brain. Harrison takes a big chunk of shrapnel in the thigh. Those 3 guys are gone. Graves is still there. That dude got like 2 or 3 Purple Hearts that deployment. It's insane.
It was a full day patrol. We had the Army with us. We were doing left seat, right seat with the Army. And in my fire team, we had Lance Corporal McPherson. No, I'm sorry, Corporal McPherson at the time. Graves, me, and Hernandez. And we were in a Humvee, and we had been hit with an IED earlier in the day, but they had missed. It kind of blew in between Humvees, so no casualties. We didn't really think much of it because it was a miss. And we were driving eastbound on MSR Michigan, and I think we were the 3rd or 4th vehicle in the convoy. I had just switched places with Graves. We had switched seats. He was sitting inside the Humvee, and then him and I switched seats about 10 minutes before this happened. And he ends up getting wounded, you know, because of it. But we're driving down. I'm in the Humvee, and explosion. Humvee fills with dust. Loud explosion. And Humvee comes to a halt. Now the Army, this Humvee was an Army Humvee, and the door mechanism was broken, so it was 550 shut. They'd used 550 cord to tie it shut, and so I could not get out of the Humvee. And I looked right, and I see Lance Corporal Harrison. He's sitting directly next to me. And Lance Corporal Harrison, the first thing I see is red. I just see red spurts of blood start hitting the wall of the Humvee. Because the shrapnel had come into his thigh. And so he's screaming. I look back over my shoulder. I see Graves. He's screaming, Corporal's hit. And he grabbed McPherson's shoulder and turned him. And that's when I saw the injuries to McPherson and to his face. And I saw Zimmerman. Zimmerman was grabbing his eye, grabbing his face, saying, my eye, my eye. And Hernandez, Ivan Hernandez, he was saying, shut up, your eye's fine. So I get my K-bar out, I start hacking at the 550 cord. And I'm able to cut through it all. I jump out, and we had a guy, Lyra. Lyra was standing there, and I was terrified. And he was like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "No, I'm not all right." He's like, "Just watch this road." And so I looked up, and the Army gunner who was on the truck, his whole arm was shredded, just trash. It was just a bunch of shrapnel through it. Couldn't move it. So I ended up getting on the gun on the 240, and they pull Mac off the truck. And he's looking at me, and he's pointing at his arm. He's pointing at his arm. I think he had some shrapnel on his arm as well. But I could see his eyes locked with me. And he didn't have, anything below his mouth. And I was convinced, I'm like, all right, he's dead. So my seniors had never been to combat. My seniors, they were getting their first gulp of combat right alongside me. However, you wouldn't know it because these men had trained. And the training the Marine Corps puts on, it does prepare you to be a leader and to be a warrior. And so Corporal Martin was my team leader after Mac got hit. Corporal Martin is top two finest infantry Marine I've ever seen in my life. Unflappable under fire, unshakable, just level-headed, aggressive, decisive, everything you would want in a infantry leader. That's Corporal Martin, James Martin. And then Corporal Southern. Corporal Southern, to me, is an American hero. And he will never say that. But I'll tell you right now, he was my squad leader on April 7th. We had a squad of 9 men, 5 of us wounded, no corpsman, no radio, in the middle of Ramadi, in the middle of a gunfight. And Corporal Southern saved me and every other man in that squad's life. I specifically watched him. I watched Corporal Martin shield a fallen Marine with his own body as 1,000 rounds hit the wall around him. We had been ambushed. It was a well-coordinated ambush on the 7th. It basically, when you got a row, it's not a row itself, but when you're able to dump down on that line, that's what they had coming up this road. And it wasn't Easy Street, but it was near it. It was right near Easy Street. And so we're walking directly into their line of fire where their machine gun, no matter left or right, we have nowhere to go. We're stuck in the concrete walls of their streets. We have nowhere to go. And so you miss point guy, you're gonna hit the third guy. You know what I'm saying? So they've got us pretty well dialed in. And I look to my left and I see all these rounds hitting this concrete wall, and I could see Kevin Miller Jr. from Philadelphia is running. Now, he'd already been blown up by a hand grenade. His Achilles had been cut. So he's hobbled, and he's running, and he drops. He drops in a dead sprint. He goes lights out, face plants. I'm like, oh, he just got shot in the head. I watched Corporal Southern straddle his body, his lifeless body, is just laying there. He straddles his body and he starts trading fire. They're right above me, so he's shooting over my head because I can't see over this concrete wall. And he's shooting, but I'm watching as just all these rounds are hitting all around Southern, like he was protected, like there was a bubble on him. I saw rounds hitting all around him, but he didn't flinch or hesitate for 1 second. He just stood over Miller Jr.'s body, protecting him with his own body. And so that to me is a leader. That's a not only a leader. I mean, that's a man. That's Brandon Southern. And to this day, if I had to pick one man to go into a gunfight with, it would be Brandon Southern.
So April 7th, we got sent out QRF again. We got dropped off. We had no radio. We didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know where we got dropped off. So we get dropped off. Our thing was, we're gonna move to wherever we hear gunfire, right? So we start patrolling through streets, figuring out where we can go, figuring out what's going on, running into a couple other squads. Hey man, where we at? We're trying to figure it out. We got hit by our first, it was like a grenade when we're walking down one of the roads and I'm out front trying to figure out where we're at. And all of a sudden I hear, grenade, grenade. And I turn around like an idiot, right? So like diving off and trying to hide, and damn grenade blows up. Most of the guys on the squad get hit by some sort of shrapnel. I teed up with throwing a grenade right back over the fence, where it came from, the little, not fence, but mud hut or mud wall. We go through, we clear house, but guys bugged out the back. They were gone. They hit us real quick. They threw the grenade and then they reached over with an AK and kind of sprayed, and we had a dude right underneath them spray right around him, right? These are those type of moments where you don't realize what happened until you start thinking about it later on. You're like, God moment, man. Like, something was there to, really, it wasn't that time. You know what I mean? Like, that happened. It was super close. Dudes were super, fortunate that God put them exactly where they were and not 6 inches to the right and get shot in the head, or in the middle of the road and get hit by the grenade, We assessed the situation. We had dudes hit. Remember pulling down one guy's pants because he got peppered in the butt. He had little trickles down his butt cheek, and we slapped him and said, let's go, man. We're just getting, we just got here. Like, we got to keep going. Anyway, a couple hours later, we're still patrolling down the road. We run into Bronzy, CO, and his RTO. Like, they're on their own. I don't know how we ran into him, but we did. So we're patrolling down. We get hit on we came on the backside of an ambush, and the enemy finally saw us and hit one of our guys in the back, and he fell. So we're like, hey, we got to push in this house, because we started getting pretty heavy fire, right? Martin's laying down fire, I'm laying down fire, Kanaga's getting some. We pull the guys we get into a house, and a family's in there, and we're like, hey, get up on the roofs to get security. Somebody watch the doors. We start covering all our areas of opportunity for the enemy, right? Not realizing we're on the backside of an ambush. And we got guys, saw gunners, Kanaga's up on the roof getting some, Martin's up there, Bronzy went up there to get radio comms to figure out what else is going on in the city. We assess our guy, and because everything was wet, so we're like, dude, he's bleeding out. Like, start ripping stuff off, rip the plate carry off, rip his shirt off, and there's nothing, right? So it hit his back and it hit the plate, but it hit his camelback that he had on. So it soiled the shirt with water. So we're trying to assess that. He's good to go, but he definitely got hit pretty hard in the back, and it definitely, like, he couldn't walk at the time. He regained. But the cool thing was the family that was there started attending to us. Sir, do you need anything? Do you need water? Do you need a cloth to help? So they were terrified because, you got a bunch of burly dudes with guns running through your house, and your house is getting shot at quite a bit at this point. And they were helping, man. And you know, I go up on the roof, and I'm not sure how Bronzy would tell the story, but I was trying to convince Bronzy that we needed to leave, right? Like, not saying the nicest words. Corporal Southern, you got to calm down. You know, he's trying to calm me down, and we're picking dudes off because we realized then that we were on the backside of this ambush because we were getting hit really good. And I don't remember the time duration that we were pinned down in that building, but Bronzy's like, finally gave me the green light, like, hey, get us out of here. So we go out, we start popping smokes, doing all the things that we do to conceal our movement, do what we can. And this is where we go link up at the big soccer field with most of the other company that was out. And the last moment of that, I remember we're trying to cross everybody, and we start getting lit up by machine gun fire. And I remember sprinting, running, jumped over some little fruit stand, you know, because it was like a movie scene. You know, everything's blowing up, and I'm running. I jumped because I had a guy kind of freeze up, and finally got to him. We got everybody across. But man, like, looking at that day for what it was and understanding the situation kind of after the fact, like, you know, you're pinned down in the house, you're on the backside of an ambush. It could have been a very, very bad day for the whole squad, man. And, you know, we're out that day because somebody else got hit and they were having a really bad day. So, I don't know, man, that was the day, you know, most that I remember. And the day that we came together as a team, and, you know, we took out some dudes there because we were getting hit pretty good. But end of the day, we got everybody out. You know, we linked up, continued movement with the company. I mean, at that point, we all kind of bounded back to the fob. But yeah, man, it was an interesting one.
I remember when 4th Platoon, the guys that were not wounded, I remember when they came back to the combat outpost that day. It was in the evening, and like, we kind of had like, all had this agreement of like, we need to give those guys space. Don't freaking talk to them, because we have no clue what they just went through. Like, we're green. Those guys got experience now. And don't mess with them. Just let them be. I remember seeing a few of them in the chow hall that evening, and the look on their faces was this very stoic, serious look of like, they just seen death. And it also had a look of absolute determination in their faces. I didn't see fear on them. I saw determination and a level of seriousness in all these gentlemen that I had not known before. Because I was a boot with all these guys. I'd known them for, 2 years. So I remember the next time I went out on patrol, I was immediately concerned about being mangled by an IED, like McPherson, like Zimmerman, like Harrison. Like the idea of getting a part of your body ripped off. It's a terrifying thought. I always thought, like, if I get hit, I'd rather be shot and killed than blown apart. And I used to I had like this nutsack protector on attached to my vest, and if I was in a vehicle, I would like tuck that thing up underneath me and try to sit on it as much as I could, because the thought of getting my manhood blown apart was just terrifying to me.
You know, I think you can't tell April 6th without talking a little bit about the 5th. I always talk about that. Is we were up in the OPs, and us first squad always called ourselves Death Squad, and we thought, hey, we want to go do all these crazy things, and they pulled us down off the OPs, and we had to go over, and we went up by 297 where it splits, and we went over by that mosque, and I don't remember what it was exactly. It's been so many years what we were doing, but Joe, your team went one way, we went up into that, in that monument area in the middle, and we sat in and we took heavy fire from that mosque. We brought in some EPWs. We got hit pretty hard. We had a lot of fire, and that was really, for us, we had pot shots, things like that, but that was actually like the first time we took heavy fire right then. And we didn't know it at the time, but looking back at it, that's what really set off the 6th, is they were setting up, they were prepping for something. We came in, and on the 5th, and we debriefed, went up in the OPs, we were up all night, and then went off, got our patrol order early that morning on the 6th, and we stepped off with, hey, it was like, I think it was 3rd squad went out, went one way, 2nd squad went straight to the government center, and then 1st squad was just going right through the heart of the city. We thought, cool, whatever, we're on a regular patrol. And it was really quick that, at least from what I remember, is we realized this is not a regular patrol, because we normally had kids following us, we had people around, and it was quiet. There wasn't a lot of commotion around, something was just up. And when we were on that patrol, I remember we took some pot shots and we saw a guy, and I remember this vividly because it was a blue shirt. We went down there, we ran down the street, we kicked in the door, we cleared this house, grabbed someone, and I had to stop you because you wanted to jump over the roof to the other one because we saw him on the other side. And we went back down, cleared that house, grabbed him, we found some AK, so I had some AK mags, which I actually found some records later that I'd written down. I was like, hey, I have AK mags in my pockets. I did not steal them. They're there from when we were clearing houses. And we took that over, and we got the call over the radio that it was 3rd squad was hit. They were ambushed, and we needed to move to them, and it was contact to fire.
As a young person, I never idolized sports players, like growing up, when we were little, it was like John Elway, John Marino, quarterbacks, people, my fellow peers idolized sports figures. And the person I wanted to model my life after was King David from the Bible. This young man that wasn't overly handsome, he wasn't overly strong, he wasn't overly big, and he was God called him a man after his own heart. Somebody that had a lifetime of great things, but also some very, sin and shortcomings, and he always got, through that. And, the story of David and Goliath, Goliath coming out, blaspheming God, and, David being witness to that and being just filled with rage and, calling Goliath out and charging at him, this young man, like I said, he wasn't big, he wasn't strong, with a sling and some stones and running full sprint at what was certain death. That story, was so impactful to me. And I always, as a young person prior to the Marine Corps, I always wondered what could I do that? Could I face certain death and not face it, but charge into it full sprint? And so, April 6th, was that moment for me. On the 5th, my platoon was at the government center, just pulling security, and we came back to combat outpost under cover of darkness. And so, 0 dark 30, we walk down to Michigan, we get back to the combat outpost, and we immediately went to QRF, which is quick reaction force. Basically, you sleep in a little room, your whole platoon, in all your gear, just waiting for, somebody to need support. And so the morning of the 6th, we're laying on cots in all of our gear, and I was dead asleep, and we got the call that 3rd platoon is pinned down. They're taking heavily fire, and they have casualties. Immediately we're up and we're amped, on my first deployment, I was 3rd platoon. So some of my best friends are out there getting shot at currently. Excuse me. So full of fury, fear, not ever for myself, but like I said, my friends and we could hear it, from combat outposts, we could hear it. And so we all load up in the trucks, and the trucks pull out of the combat outpost, and we start heading, into the city. And we didn't get very far, and the drivers stopped. They refused to take the trucks any further. And the Marines, us in the trucks, we weren't having any of that. We piled out of the trucks, and literally all hell is breaking loose. I mean, we can see explosions, the gunfire. The whole city was erupting. And we just took off, full dead sprint. And that was that David and Goliath moment for me personally. Like, knowing ahead of me lies certain death, but my friends are out there, and they are going to die if we don't come help them. And I found out how I'd react, and You know, how not just me, but my whole platoon. We reacted by full-on sprint, charging into that. And until we started taking direct fire, and then it was, you know, kick in a door, get a rooftop, suppress the threat, envelop them, and we just, you know, leapfrogged until we got to 3rd Platoon.
Okay, so we were on like a schedule. It was like one day you had day ops, the next day you had night ops, and then quick reaction force, then you had your day off, which was like working parties, relaxing, I guess. Not as much relaxing as I would like, but that's the way it is. And obviously if some big thing happened, it doesn't matter your schedule, you would participate in like a raid. And we never really heard like real big combat before, and we're on post on April 6th, and we heard like real gunfights in the city. Nothing like I've ever seen, but it was far enough away to where like it didn't feel like it pertained to us, even though it's somewhere in the city, but our city was huge. And all the other platoons were out fighting, and the platoons are very competitive. I don't know why, but it's almost like we couldn't have 1st Platoon have combat and 2nd Platoon not, because it would be like the end of the world, having something on us. And our 6-hour guard shift from, I want to say from midnight to 6 in the morning was over. And then we went down to like the garage area with all the vehicles, and we're like, hey, can we go out? And they're like, no, we have guard shift. You can't just go out and fight. And we're like, put the cooks, because apparently the cooks it's always been the joke, like just throw the cooks out there and everyone else will go out. And they're like, no. And then all of a sudden, like an army, I think they're called Bradley vehicles, came in. I'd never seen an army vehicle. They were in a different base somewhere else. And I saw a guy with his arm blown off. And I had never seen anything like that before, like close up. And I was like very mesmerized. And then like our machine gunner, he had like tears in his eyes, and he was like a kind of a tough guy. And I kind of looked at him, and then they're like, okay, guys, you're gonna go out to outside the wire. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of scary. And I remember I put on my flak jacket, and then my hand was shaking so much I couldn't put my magazine inside the it's been many years, what's it called, the magazine well, and it fell to the ground. I'm like, I hope no one saw that, but they were busy probably, you know, being nervous and scared too. And then it happened again. Then I had to like breathe, relax, and you know, take it one step at a time. I put the magazine in the magazine well, okay, and then rack the bolt back, and then but yeah, we walked out the front gate. We turned right, and we probably walked only 200 meters, but just to give overwatch while the other platoons were coming back. And so we didn't see any combat or anything that day, but just the being so scared and shaking and seeing an army guy without his arm was probably the scariest thing I've personally ever seen. Even the combat itself wasn't in front of me, like just seeing it bits and pieces, I felt was, yeah, I'll probably never forget that.
Baptism of Fire, which was April 6, 2004. I just remember being on patrol. We were leaving combat outpost, I think sometime in the late morning. We were satellite patrolling through the neighborhood south of the MSR, Michigan. And it seemed like a pretty nice, peaceful day. We were just making our way down to the government center, which was probably a couple mile patrol. At one point, I just remember looking up, seeing some kids playing soccer on the narrow street that we were walking down, and gunfire erupted, and I heard a couple explosions, and saw what looked like a Roman candle coming down the street. It ended up being an RPG coming down about head level. Struck a tree above one of our Marines and blew up, wounding him. They started small arms gunfire, automatic gunfire. Wasn't really sure where it was coming from at first. All I knew is I wanted to take cover, and there was 2 or 3 kids in the street that I grabbed up 2 of them and took them into a courtyard, and we just kind of got in the courtyard, got up on one of the rooftops, gathered our bearings, and started returning fire with the enemy and started bounding through the courtyard. It ended up being a pretty long day, and that was kind of when I realized, there was a committed force of insurgents, and within the city that were going to actually put up a fight, and it wasn't going to be easy deployment like I initially thought.
And we start patrolling through, moving in, and we turn onto Easy Street. Last guy gets on there and they open fire on us. And I remember just being hit, us not actually being shot, but just rounds coming in all around us. 360 elevated positions, and we just turned and returned fire. And then we sought cover, ceased fire, and no one was hit at first. That was what was the weirdest thing, is like they opened up an ambush on us, and they were horrible shots because they didn't hit any of us. And said, we got to start clearing these houses. And so, we sat in, we started kicking in doors, and it wasn't like training. It wasn't, hey, we're going to take a whole squad through this house. It was me and one other guy, we were just trying to get through there and figure it out and block off that street. And then we were cordoning off that end, and we knew that we had to just clear that area. We were hit pretty heavy. We were getting pinned down. And, for me, it was keeping cover on that one end. So we were at one end of the patrol, myself. I think it was Martinez across the street, facing down, keeping it clear as everyone was coming up on Easy Street. We had the rest of the squad behind us. At this point, you had moved on because I think you were trying to link up with someone else. I don't remember exactly what that point was, but as insurgents were coming up on us, we were firing on them in front of us. There was an ambulance that had come up on us. They jumped out. They went and started trying to fire on us. I opened up with my saw. Rod had come over at that point as well, and we were just knocking them down, but they just kept coming. Every time we knock them down, they keep coming. And thought, we're going to run out of ammo pretty quick. And then he moves back. We're trying to call in support. At this time, find out later, obviously we're being hit throughout the city, but we couldn't get any support in. And I'm here, I'm on the corner, and we have a picture. I have one at home of where that corner was. And I hear Langhorse yelling for me, and I'm like, what is going on? This guy should be over here with Ortiz. Why is he yelling at me? And he's like, he's lost. And he's like trying to link up with us. And he's like, hey, where you at? Trying to figure all that out. And I was like, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm on the corner. I'm by this door. Left one's open, right one's closed. And it was just getting mad. I was like, why is this guy, like, he can't figure this out? And I get up, because I'm on a knee, and I get up to go towards him. And as I move towards him, it pop up behind me, enemy does, and opens fire, hits the pole, hits all around me. I can hear the rounds cracking. If you've ever been down in range on the rifle range as a Marine, you pull targets, that crack sound, and you can hear them popping around you, is like that. And I could feel and hear a loud pop. And at that point, I couldn't breathe, blood pouring out of my face, and realized I was shot. At that point, I was shot in the face. I found out later the reason I couldn't breathe was I had a left pneumothorax, which is a collapsed lung from the impact. Severed my external carotid artery. I'm pouring blood out, and just in really rough shape. Langhorse was killed right there. Obviously I didn't get to him. Had to get back and get cover at that point. So I moved myself because I didn't want them to get to me. I have to come get me and drag me out. So I ran back over to where Pete Flom was, and Holt and Rod were kind of like 2 houses back, a little bit entryway, and we went in, and they were yelling at me to get down the whole time because rounds were trailing me, excuse me. But I was like, nah, I got to get back to these guys because I'm hurt, and my mind's not there. I just know I need help. Get back to them. We took over a house, and we're sitting in this house, and there's a family. This is something that I always think, and I want to make sure to tell people, is there's a family in there, because everyone thinks it's all bad guys in the area. There was good people there too, and they were hiding, and they gave me towels because we ran through our pressure dressings. I had 2 in my first aid kit, 1 in my sleeve, and we were just going through them, pouring blood through it. I knew that I needed to take a knee because I would bleed too fast if I laid down, so I had to keep my head above my heart. Took a knee, and we took over this front room of that house. in that house there, Pete was on the door. They were kept coming in on us, and we kept just getting them, popping them as they would come up, and they just kept coming and coming. And I just thought they were never going to stop them until we're going to run out of ammo. At that point, I know it's a lot to get to this, is we are sitting there and we've taken casualties. I know that at the time I was pretty sure, but Langhorst was hit and he was killed. But we heard over the radio, because you had moved down towards where Derek and you, Joe, moved over towards Ortiz, and we heard that he was wounded, and then we heard over the PR or the headset radio that he was KIA, and that was Langhorst didn't sink in because initially I didn't know. I just knew he was hit. Was pretty sure I was kind of out of it, and then yes, he was killed, but then that was the first time we really heard, and Derek was killed. He was killed, and Pete Flom, his best friend, just like you, Joe, you and I were, and I just saw his face change. And I don't think he's ever, Pete's a great, fun-loving guy, but I think that day right there changed him forever. And just the emotion right there of just seeing what he was going through, realizing his best friend, his buddy, he was, and me too. I mean, this guy that we cared about so much. He was killed, and we're in bad shape, and I'm bleeding out and I'm about to die. We're almost out of ammo. We don't know how we're going to get out of here. We got to link up with you guys. You guys are pinned down. You've been blown up. Ortiz has been blown up by a grenade. I don't know how we're getting out of here. I don't think we're going to live. And I've read some after-action reports to follow up on this later. I think we were in there about an hour, which is just crazy, thinking it severed my external carotid artery. It's a blessing that I'm even alive, because I should have bled out within a minute. But God was there with me, and I fully believe that. I know that, and I have a very strong faith. Thank God for putting Joe in my life and helping talk me through that. But for me, it was just, I know that's the only reason I'm alive. And we sat in that house until we could get support in there, and weapons company eventually pulled up on us. And they looked back at me and said, "Can you walk?" We start to go out, and insurgents start coming back on us, shooting at us, and a 50 caliber and a Mark 19 on there just started unloading. And I was like, yeah, just destroying them. And they looked back and they said, "Can you run?" Like, hell yeah, I can run. And I ran out, and they loaded me in a Humvee, and it was the 4-door, whatever one. And I just remember telling Rod, I was like, "I'm sorry," because I felt bad. I'm letting my team down. I'm letting the squad down. You're pulling me out of here. Like, I got shot. I didn't, as my dad said, I ducked too late. I didn't. He had to pull me out of there, but I had to go. I was wounded. I was dying. Pulled me out to a predetermined casualty collection point, and at that point, that was the first time I saw you since we got separated there. And I remember the corpsman came up and was checking on me, and then you came over, and I don't think you recognized me at first because of how bad it was blown open. And then they were kind of looking at getting my ID, trying to figure stuff out, and they kicked me out of that Humvee is the funny thing. Like, I'm dying here, and they're kicking me out of that. And they made us go because they were taking all the guys and getting them on the high backs. And you got in the passenger seat of that one, and I think the rest of us got in the back. They they had Derek in there, because they told me he's dead, he can't feel it, just jump on him. And I was, fuck you. I'm gonna, and I made sure not to, as best I could, not to lay on him, but I got in there, and they drove us out of there. They were jumping curbs. I think you were shooting out the passenger side of that Humvee. I remember that, and I just remember being pissed off because I was like, man, this is, like, at first the adrenaline, I didn't have a corpsman with me, so I never had any morphine. I'm in a lot of pain, and they're jumping curbs, and I'm like, it hurts. So getting out of there, and I remember when they pulled us up to the what was that, Charlie Med or the Mashing Hospital, when you go up in there and there's a gate there, and they stopped us and checked us to get in there. Like, we're dying here. We got a KIA, we're wounded, and they let us through. And then we pulled up in there, and they said something about if you can walk, and you came around and helped me walk in. We got in there, and that's from there. It was, hey, they were cutting my clothes off, and I remember like, hey, I don't want them cutting my clothes off. There's a female nurse in here, cutting all this, and then they put the IV in, and they're like, hey, lay back, go to sleep. And I fought to stay awake this long, and I remember that. And but they put meds in there and out, and from there it was a lot of just, hey, I almost died and my heart stopped, my lungs obviously was collapsed, severed external carotid artery, just trying to keep me alive, and they medevaced me from there to Baghdad for a couple days until I was stable enough, and then over to Germany, and that's actually when Joe met back up with me in Germany and was able to call my dad and let him know I was still alive. I was, in rough shape, but I was alive.
I started being very intentional with my Marines about spiritual things. I started praying with my squad or platoon every time we go on patrol. And like I kept this little New Testament with the Psalms inside my flak, like right here. And I'd whip that thing out before patrol and say, hey guys, gather around, let's read something real quick. We'd read Psalm 23. I had Psalm 140, verse 8, written on my green monster notebook. Oh God, you have shielded my head. You have covered my head in the day of battle. And I kept focusing on that verse. You have covered my head in the day of battle. It was very important to me. My mom had showed me that verse and really prayed that verse for me. And had conversations with my guys too, because it was now like the prospect of we're not all gonna come home from this was real. And as a corporal, as a team leader, and as a Christian, I knew I had a big job to do. So we go out there. I remember one night I was like sitting in an ambush and in the prone right next to Derek Halal, one of the men in my fire team. He was like my point man in my fire team. Big tall Marine, like 6'4", lanky dude from Indianapolis, 24 years old. I was 21. So he's my boot. He's also 3 years older than me. It's kind of weird. And I was just intentional with that guy. And I asked him, I was like, what kind of faith do you have? Where are you at with God? And he told me that he was a Christian and he had accepted Christ into his life. And I asked like a little prying question, like, all right, well, let's say you die. Are you going to go to heaven, and what do you base it off? We're just like whispering back and forth. And he tells me, well, I prayed to receive Christ, and I base my salvation on what it says in Ephesians 2:8-9. For by grace you're saved through faith. And not of yourself, not of works. It's a gift of God, so no one can boast. And he quoted that thing for me. So I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And Derek was he was a freaking joker. Like, it was no accident that Derek Halal was in Joker company, because he was an absolute joker. Like, he did funny stuff all the time. Back in Kuwait, on our way into Iraq, we'd walk to chow, and like the Marines, we would march to chow, pivot on our turns, and we'd see these army dudes like laying around in their hooches. They're all wearing gloves. It's like freaking cold out there. These guys are wearing gloves and keeping their hands in their pockets and wearing beanies, and they had bicycles and lounge chairs in front of their hooches. And us Marines, we're freaking marching. No beanies, no gloves, no bicycles, no lawn chairs. And we're coming back from chow one day, and Derek sees a bicycle in front of a hooch, and he gets out of the ranks, because I think we're like with a squad, and he grabs that bike, jumps on it, and rides back to the hooch. And it was like the funniest thing. But that was Derek Halal. He did funny stuff, but the man loved Christ. He committed his life to Christ. He was forgiven by Christ. So we're in Ramadi. We're in Ramadi for a few weeks, and I get a letter from my girlfriend. And in this letter, she tells me that her Sunday school teacher was in Iraq at the same time I was. Her Sunday school teacher was a missionary. She used to be a sheriff's deputy, and then she decided to go into missions work. She's up in Mosul, which is a couple hours away from us. And my wife, Candace, is telling me, girlfriend at the time, telling me that her friend, Karen Watson, was just gunned down in an ambush and killed. Like straight up martyr for the faith. And I'm reading that on probably like April 2nd. Next thing I hear about after that letter is I hear about these 4 contractors, like Blackwater dudes, that were hung from a bridge in Fallujah, burned, executed. And there's like talk about a jihad taking place. So I think our ears are kind of perking up to the reality on the ground, like going on around us, but we're not seeing it yet. Like we're seeing small little things here and there, little tiny skirmishes, IED or 2. Obviously with the 4 guys that were hit prior, like that's a massive event, but it wasn't a tempo that was alarming. And then the morning of April 6th, we get this intelligence brief, and we're told there's supposed to be hundreds of armed gunmen that take the government center. And so we're gonna send 3rd Platoon. We had operations day. So we're gonna go provide support and security at the government center in Ramadi. Ramadi is one of Saddam's most favored cities. Ramadi is in the heart of the Sunni Triangle, and seemed like there's a lot of money in Ramadi. Like, seemed like a wealthy area. So the government center is of great importance, obviously, for the jihadis to maintain control of. And so they send our platoon out. We leave in 3 different squads, 3 different time frames. And my squad is, we take a track where we're like going through the heart of the city and very dense urban population areas. And as we get down there, there's like, someone fires a shot at us. We end up tracking down this Iraqi police officer that was probably one of the bad guys. And we're dealing with him like on a roof. I got up on a rooftop and I see this dude on another roof, and I was about to jump from roof to roof. And in that moment, I remembered my mom had told me specifically, do not ever jump from roof to roof when you're in Iraq. Like, she just thought about that thing, ordered me not to. And, you know, I don't know how far apart these houses were, 5, 6, 8 feet. I was thinking about doing it, and my mom's advice, or her order, stopped me from doing it. So like went down, got to the next building, and then we went up and we got this guy. Zip tied this fool up, and we're dealing with him, and all of a sudden we're getting this chatter on the radio, and our 3rd squad in 3rd Platoon is in contact with the enemy. And we're like, we gotta go help these dudes. We get outside this house, we can hear the gunfire distant. It's probably like a kilometer away. You know, it's a good walk through the city, and we gotta provide security for ourselves the whole way. And we take off on foot, and we turn down this one road, later known as Easy Street. Maybe it was at the time. I'd never heard of it before. We're walking down the street, and it's like an immediate ghost town. There's nobody there. And it was like the thing that you would see in a movie, you know, like before the shootout at the OK Corral, like freaking ghost town. And we're moving down this street, we're moving to contact, we're trying to get there, we're not just trying to walk there, but we're obviously not running. And my platoon sergeant, he's with us, Damian Rodriguez, and he's like, Hayes, push, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I got Derek Halal in front of me, I'm right behind him, and we're the lead element in this column. And I'm telling Derek, like, speed up, let's go. And then Damian again is like, Hayes, let's push, let's push. And, you know, he's wanting to get in the gunfight and get to his guys. And so we're like almost at a jog going down the street, and then all of a sudden ambush opens up, gunfire from everywhere, raining down on us, like 360 everywhere. I didn't see anybody shooting at us, but the gunfire was coming from everywhere, whether it was a rooftop, balcony, you know, through a window, maybe someone far back in a room shooting out a window, so you never even see the muzzle flash. It was loud, it was intense, it lasted, I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Like you lose track of time hearing that, being there. There's nowhere to hide. I remember all I did was just take a knee, and I'm immediately, I didn't even think about shooting. I'm immediately shooting at wherever I think the sound is coming from. And all of a sudden the gunfire stops. We're like, ceasefire. We're looking around, no one's hit. We're like feeling ourselves. I can't believe nobody's freaking not bleeding right now. And next thing we know, platoon sergeant, squad leader, they're making movements to get inside of a house and start clearing after, you know, where they ascertained gunfire was coming from. So they start going house to house. They leave me and Derek and Juan Linares on this street corner to just watch the six of the patrol, make sure no one comes in behind us. So us 3 Marines are out there, and we're out there, and we can hear them shooting, throwing hand grenades, yelling. Sounds like everything I ever wanted to be a part of, and I'm not a part of it right now. Next thing I know, I'm looking down the street from where we already came from, and I see a guy step out, and he's like looking around. I look at him through my ACOG. I'm staring at this guy, and he's got an AK-47, and I'm like, click, that's a terrorist. You know, we're hunting terrorists. I immediately associate that guy with 9/11. Hilarious as that probably sounds. Like he flew a airliner into the World Trade Center. And I started shooting at him. I don't know what happened, but he disappears like right inside of a building. And I let my squad leader know. I had like this funky little headset. I say, hey, we got a guy down here. He went over by this blue car about 100 meters down the road from where we already came. I want to go after him. He's like, go ahead. So us 3 Marines, just like nice, tight little half fire team formation, assault down that way. And we get to where this insurgent was at when I was engaging him. We're at an intersection, 4-way intersection. There's elevated positions, these, you know, concrete block houses. They've got parapet roofs. They're, you know, 15, 18 feet high. And all of a sudden, we've got gunfire opening up on the 3 of us from at least 2 of these houses that are across the street from each other. And so the 3 of us are engaging back and forth from house to house as these guys would pop up over the rooftop or the parapet roof. Like you just see their head pop up and they'd spray with their AK-47, and we're engaging them. That guy goes down, another guy pops up, does it again, and we're just like back and forth, back and forth. It was like, I always think of it as that game you play at like Pizza Hut or something, the whack-a-mole game. Like you're just like hitting every little gopher that pops up. So good to be back here. Colors, you're ready. Never heard a scream like that. And I turn and I look, and Derek is down on the ground. And the other 2 Marines that were with him, they're down there with him, not wounded. They're checking on him. And I'm like, I immediately abandoned my whole idea about this AT-4, We separate to two different sides of this street. So there's probably 17, 18 feet of distance between me and Ortiz, who are in the prone position now, and then Derek, as well as the corpsman, and two other Marines. And now I'm yelling across the street while shooting from the prone, trying to figure out what's going on with Derek. And they're telling me he got shot in the head. And I'm like, I'm having a hard time processing it. I hate to be graphic, but I'd never heard anyone die or seen anyone die. And it's a very strange experience. It's awful. It's not what you would expect. And it just feels very, very messed up, and like in a way that it should just never be. I probably really butcher it trying to even say it like that, but it just feels dirty. And we're still stuck in this fight. Now we have to move a Marine to go anywhere because we're not going to leave anyone behind. Like we don't do that. So continuing to engage these enemies, I still got guys on these rooftops. I'm at least pulled back from this intersection, so I'm now avoiding any flanking fire. I'm radioing my squad leader. He's asking me the status of Derek, and I say he's KIA. I had to say it a few times over the radio because he didn't understand it. He wasn't processing it, and I'm just trying to explain to him he's KIA. He was killed in action. I can't even explain, the method, like how it all happened to him. We have no time for that. And I'm asking, we need more Marines. I'm thinking to myself, how are we going to link up with them? How are we going to get Derek out of here? How are we going to make it out of this thing? Because when we initially got in, I look at my mindset, I want to go down there after this guy and catch him and shoot him. My mindset now is a complete 180. I want to get out of here. I want to get my fallen Marine back to base. I don't want to get shot. I don't want to lose any more Marines. And the next thing I know is there's an explosion on the street corner in front of us. There's like a electrical line on a pole. That thing's like shooting sparks. And me and Ortiz, we're like side by side. And we're like, they got grenades. We didn't think about that. No sooner had we thought that than there's a hand grenade rolling down towards us. Someone had crept up to that street corner that we could no longer see around and chucked a grenade down it. And the two of us are looking at this grenade just rapidly rolling up to us, just kind of a short bounce off the road. It stops, 10, 15 feet away. And we put our heads down and we eat that thing. It was like, I've always thought, it was like my body got hit by an earthquake. I've never been shaken as hard as I was shaken in my life. Couldn't hear anything afterwards. I remember pushing myself up off the ground after the explosion, and I immediately saw my left hand was covered in blood, and I stood up. I was like in the middle of the street, standing up. I'm looking at my gun. I probably had bullets falling out of my magazine because I had a chunk of shrapnel that went through my magazine on my weapon. I can't even do anything with my left hand to manipulate my gun. I've got to like some kind of double feed situation going on with it. And I couldn't fix it myself because of my left hand. And there I am, like just standing up in the middle of the street, and I started just walking back towards this T intersection in a complete state of like confusion and shock. If the enemy had the presence of mind to follow that grenade with an assault, I think we would all be dead. I don't know why they didn't play that card, but they didn't play it. Because they could have had us. So the other Marines, they pulled back. We're all pulled back to this T intersection. We now have to cover in front, to our left, and to our right. And we're splitting that up pretty good. Ortiz gets back over there. His hand looks like a couple pounds of hamburger that had been thrown against the wall. His left hand is absolutely shredded. And he's bleeding a lot. Corman's working on him. Corman's trying to do his thing. And these other Marines are like, they're telling me, Hayes, we gotta get out of here. And I'm like, I know, we gotta get out of here. But I don't know how to do that. Because I got 25 meters up the road, I have a deceased Marine named Derek Halal. And we're not leaving him. I tell my Marines, like, there I am in the prone, and luckily, one of my Marines had fixed my gun. I think it was Juan Linares, I think he fixed it for me. And he's just here to my left, and he's, I had these bipods on my M16, thank God. Thank God for my dad, John Hayes, being a gun nut, because my dad had given me these bipods before I went to Iraq, and it was because of those things that I could still fire my weapon with one hand. So I'm continuing to engage, and I told all my Marines, I said, we gotta start praying right now that God can get us out of here. And I said, I'm telling you right now, everybody start praying. And all these young Marines, they start praying like, God help us. I'm praying, Jesus, please deliver us. I'm just yelling prayers to God as we're continuing to pull that trigger for his deliverance. And short time later, we've got several helicopters overhead, like buzzing our area. We can start hearing heavy gunfire coming from the direction of the outpost. We're hearing like 50 caliber kind of stuff. We're like, that's some good sounding music right now. And then we started seeing a flash or two of like a Marine would run by an alleyway. They didn't see us, but they'd run by. We saw more insurgents like walking by these alleyways. They didn't even know we were there. We're super low on ammo. I think I had one magazine left out of the 8 that I carried. We expended almost everything that we had. And it's like in the nick of time, one of my best friends comes running up to me with his fire team, David Walter, Todd Bolding, who would be killed 6 weeks later. I think Henderson come up to us. And I've never, ever been so happy to see 1st Platoon in my life, which is funny to say, you know, because there's a little bit of camaraderie, yet competitiveness between 3rd and 1st. And, but David was my roommate and one of the funniest Marines I know, and there he is, like there to freaking save our day. And shortly after those 3 or 4 Marines run up, there's Captain Bronzy. And it was like, as I think about it later on, we prayed for God to deliver us, and he sent 1st Platoon. And I think about how close we were to not having one Marine dead in this small unit, but having 6 or 7. It was close. One more lucky grenade could have incapacitated multiple guys. And, you know, that scene of those 4 contractors hung from a bridge and burned, that could have been 7 Marines. That could have been 7 Marines from 3rd Platoon. And God sent 1st Platoon just in the nick of time. And I went up with Captain Bronzy. He and I recovered Derek together. I said a quick prayer over Derek, said my goodbyes real quick, and then I get sent to this casualty collection point. It's like this little makeshift, like, everybody that's wounded, go over here. And I get over there, and I'm looking around, and there's a couple Marines. I don't even know if I recognized who they were. Like, they're obviously my company, and I can't even think about who they were right now. But I look off towards this Humvee, and there's this guy sitting in it, and his whole head's bandaged up with white gauze and bloody, you know. And see this amazing Sicilian nose sticking out of it. And I said, that must be Jimmy Gentili, one of my absolute best friends. My absolute best friend. And I ran over to this Humvee, and I'm like, Jimmy, the crap happened. And he's like mumbling, I got shot in the face. And I climbed in there with him, and I just held his hand. I'm like, all right, dude, I got you. I just wanted to be with him, you know. And then they end up like kind of shuffling us around and putting us in different Humvees. I'm like riding shotgun in this other Humvee. I got my M16 hanging out the window, and we're driving. We're just like removed from the gunfight, like automatically, and it's like we're off to Charlie Med to go get patched up. And I've got my gun hanging out the window, and we're going through the city, and it's like traffic jam, like Friday at 5 on Interstate 5, you know. And I see a bus like stopped right next to me, full of Iraqis, and there's a dude in this bus looking at me. We're like making eye contact, and he's like this young military-aged male. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden he just flips me off like that. And I'm aiming right at him. And the amount of discipline that it took to deal with, I have one of my dead friends in the back of this vehicle. My best friend just got his carotid artery and half of the teeth in his face blown out. You just destroyed my hand, destroyed my buddy's hand. You just killed Moises Leghorst, because Moises was up with Jimmy and all these guys that I found out later. Moises was shot and killed. And you're freaking flipping me off right now. And the only reason I didn't do anything illegal was because I believe that God just granted me some level of patience and self-control in that moment. Anyways, get Jimmy into the hospital, help him take his gear off, and then they're taking care of him. They're immediately looking at me and trying to dress my wounds, and I'm like laying down on this table. They're patching up my hand and doing all this stuff, and I'm in pain, but I'm not like writhing in pain. It sucks. I felt like I wanted to throw up. I was dehydrated. My arm and my shoulder had been hit, but I'm okay, you know. And they're talking to me, and then all of a sudden I see this guy come walking up towards me, And I look at his collar, and there's a cross on it. And he's a chaplain. And the minute I saw that chaplain, I completely lost it and just broke down. And it's like the seriousness and the reality just overcame me at that time. And for me, the sight of the cross was like, now it's time to cry. Now it's time to like let some of this stuff out that needs to get out right now. They hit me with some morphine like really quickly after that, and I was probably knocked out or consoled due to the drugs.
They seem to be pretty organized on the 6th, 7th, and 8th. They had set up an ambush for us. I just remember seeing the RPG being fired, and then there were 2 or 3 guys that were opening up with AKs, it looked like, down the block from us. We were taking fire from some elevated positions. It seemed pretty organized from what, we'd been led to believe. We'd just be fighting, little ragtag gangs here and there, but they seemed to be pretty committed. They were definitely armed well. They gave us one hell of a fight, and we gave them one back. April 6th, just everybody moving through those streets with gunfire, bullets just ricocheting off the walls at certain points, and so many heroic actions. I mean, most people would run for cover or curl up in a ball, and freak out. I didn't see a single Marine that looked like he was even remotely scared in any way. We were just like, where's the enemy? Let's kill him. Grenades and RPGs, going off left and right, machine gun fire. I mean, I couldn't hear for 6 weeks probably after all that. But there's so many, all that's heroic to me, Most, 98% of the population would probably curl up in a ball.
Probably my worst day in Ramadi. My platoon got tasked with going to a school and giving the superintendent money and handing out soccer balls to children. Normally a pretty awesome mission. Anytime we were out in town and kids see Marines, they always know that we have, candy in our pockets, so the kids come up to you and you're giving them candy, and it was good. So looking forward to it. We pull up to the school, we push out security, and kids, surround, Marines. We weren't there very long, and an RPG was fired into a crowd of children with like 1 Marine in it. The RPG went off and it shredded a bunch of children. I was a combat aidsman, so Doc and I, we go and get the litter, and we're trying to collect the wounded children and push them in and get them into the school. The LT's on the hook trying to get the medical, limited medical resources that the Iraqi nationals had, so we can get, some help for these kids. And I had taken this little girl in my arms, and I'm trying to get her inside, and I'm looking into her face and holding this, I don't know, maybe a 1st or 2nd grader. She's pretty young. And we made eye contact, and I watched her take her last breath and the life leave her body. That was just brutal, and the anger I felt is hard to put into words. But we got all the wounded collected, the medical support's on their way, and we repositioned and we're gonna try to push out, to, look for the people that fired the RPG and, go kill them. I got on a Humvee, and I'm behind a saw in the back of an open top Humvee, just leaning over the front. And Todd Bolding is directly behind me. He was in my team. We went through SOI together, close friends. He's from Houston, Texas, and I was from Colorado, and he'd never seen snow. And so we'd get a little bit of leave and break the boundary rules, and I'd take him back to Colorado on like 96s, which you're not supposed to do, but I was never good at following, rules. And so Todd is watching my back, and I'm on the truck, on a saw, looking down, the main avenue of approach. And about 2 blocks, down the street, Iraqis start running, and Iraqis don't run. So that's a dead giveaway that, something bad's gonna happen. And so I get on the comms, we got, Iraqis running, something's probably gonna happen. And this dude in a brown man dress, comes around the corner, and he stops in the middle of the street, and he starts to turn, and he's got an RPG. And he's turning and taking a knee. And I carried the saw for 2 years. I'm very familiar with that weapon system. I can make it run, no problem. I put this guy in my sights, and I go to hit the safety, to switch the safety off, and I miss the safety. I go again, I hit the safety, and I miss the safety a second time. Now this guy's right about here. He's starting to take a knee, and he fires the RPG. I get the safety off, and I, dump a burst in him, and that RPG comes, hissing at me. And RPGs, they don't fly straight. They fly kind of fucky. And I'm watching this thing come in, he's aiming at me. I'm the only thing in the road, just me on this Humvee. And I remember thinking, like, this is a, kind of a shitty way to die, watching this thing, and it lifted in elevation, went right over my head and detonated behind me. And I was like, whew, that was close, feeling happy to be alive. And I hear in the radio that we have that Bolding's hit. And so I call Gabe up to relieve me on the saw, and I grab the stretcher, and Doc and I go over to Todd. And like I said, Todd was watching my back, and he was taking a knee, and that thing had detonated like right between his legs, and had taken one above the knee and one right below the knee. And I could, Todd got hit because I didn't shoot that guy soon enough. Like, I just... And Todd was conscious at this point, so I'm trying to tell him I'm sorry, and we're trying to calm him down. And Todd was really, really strong. The dude had muscles his muscles had muscles. And so he's, we're trying to restrain him. We're trying to get tourniquets on him. Doc's trying to get an IV in him. We get him on the stretcher. We get him up in the Humvee. And I'm trying to tell him I'm sorry and trying to keep him calm. And all Todd had to say, the only thing that could come out of his mouth was how much he loved me, how much he loved his family, how he wanted me to know that Todd had nothing but love. He wanted me to tell his family that he loved him, that he loved me. And so I'm, holding his hand, and, we got him up to, where we could, get him on a helo. And then we circled back and went right back into town to, try to get into a gunfight. And now my emotional level, was at an 11 before. Now it's, totally off the scale. I am just a raging ball of fury. It's total. I've never experienced anything else like the level of just hatred for everything. I wanted to see all of it burn. We pushed through Ramadi on foot, hoping to start another gunfight, and we ended up not taking any more contact, and pushing, back toward combat outpost. We stopped for a security halt, and I'm taking a knee on a street corner. And there's a break in the fence line, and there's this bush with a bunch of little flowers on it. Now, mind you, I have to be radiating fury. I am just a total wreck emotionally. And these two little, Iraqi girls come walking up to the fence, like right next to me. I'm mad at everything, desperately want to, fight and, destroy and just the whole thing. I'm not stable. And these two beautiful little girls come up to me. And I look at them and they kind of smile at me. And the older one, she picks a flower off the bush and she reaches her little hand through the fence and hands me that flower. And I took it, and at that point I got my humanity back. That this is, maybe we don't need to nuke this whole area, that there are, people here and there is innocence here. And, it helped level me out. You know what I mean?
I never thought much of it, right? Like I thought I was ready. This is all I trained. All I wanted to be when I grew up was in the military, in the Marine Corps as an infantry dude. So when the time came and that did happen, right? You do take a person's life that's shooting at you. There wasn't like a moment for me to where it was like victory or I wasn't happy. It just, that happened and then it just moved to the next because there was so much of it so fast that there wasn't really time to like sit there and think about it, right? Like at one point you're almost happy because you get another one because they're trying to get you, right? And that day that most of us were out, I mean, you're getting shot at most of the day. So when you know that you hit a target that's trying to kill you and your guys, it almost brings you a sense of joy and happiness. It wasn't for a long time when it took me to think about what that was, right? And really until my walk with Christ started and, one of the 10 Commandments, right? Like, don't kill. And whatever the situation was, and the world's been at war and there's been sin in this world since the beginning, since the first two people created. But it did make me reflect back on taking somebody's life, taking multiple people's life, right? And you ask yourself, and you still do, like every day, right? Like I do. It's like, was this right? Yeah, this guy's trying to kill me, but God doesn't want me to do this, So it gets tough to understand like those boundary lines that are crossed, and to try to get through it is now it's harder now than it way was back then, right? Just because I believed in God back then, but I wasn't following Jesus Christ every day. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't in it like I am now. So now having to think back on some of the evils, whether I did or whether the enemy did, like it's tough. It's hard to face sometimes. But you have that communication with God. God knows your heart and where you're at. He knows the situation that you were in and been through. God was with me the whole time, man. And again, it was one of those, let me look back on this and realize this, right? Because at the time, myself, and I'm sure others, you're questioning a lot about life, right? You're questioning why would somebody get blown up like this? Why would this happen? So it took a while to get to that point, but to understand, He does give that forgiveness. And if we take what we have to Him and offer it up and say, hey, this is what I did, that's what it takes. It takes that constant communication from me to Him and from Him to me to understand that, I do forgive you, my son, So it's taken a while to get there, man, but there's a lot of joy when you get there and you offer that up and you offer anything else up that you've done and you feel and you believe truly that He will forgive you. It makes you a different person. It makes you see it different. It makes you be able to live with things that you've done that maybe me as Brandon doesn't understand, but He allows me to understand it and have the peace for it. For the deployment in Iraq, I didn't have a lot of people in my life. It was a dark time, right? So not walking with God the way I should have been, right? To the point where I did, my wife was my foundation of me coming back and having this relationship, right? Saying, hey, our marriage will be based on this, we live under the word, right? And so getting into a relationship with God has been life-changing for me. It's allowed me to have more peace for myself. And it traces back all the way to being a kid, right? The weird things that you go through, the loss that you take as a kid, the way you're growing up, all the way until the point where I realized my relationship with God. It kind of all comes full circle, but I don't know where I'd be. Man, it probably wouldn't be in a good spot because of the way I'm living now. The Iraq deployment was one deployment of multiple that I went on. The guys that we lost were the largest number that I've ever been, a unit that I've been with that we lost, but we have lost more. So having a life full of loss from I started having loss as a kid. At 7 years old was the first time my mother passed. So starting from that point all the way to where I am now, there's been a lot of loss along the way. And people could be upset about loss. Of course, grief is a different thing, right? Like you could be sad about loss and that's a part of it. But being angry about it takes it to a whole nother level. So when I have this relationship and it allows me to kind of open up, if I didn't have that, man, I'm very good at keeping things in, very good at just pounding it down, keeping it down, don't bring it up, don't get emotional about things. Because I think since a young kid, it's been that shell that has hardened, right? And I spoke about this before, but my mother, who passed when I was 7, passed by suicide, right? So it was a different kind of passing. And that kind of started to harden the shell as a 7-year-old to where at the point where you are losing guys, like you're not immune to it, right? It still hurts, but you know how to just bury it down. And what God does is allow you to kind of loosen that up, right? So God's allowed that to happen. God's allowed, with the help of my wife, man, I'm telling you, my wife's the rock in all this and pushing me to that relationship, but understanding that, he's got me, he's going to be there for me. Without it, I don't know where I'd be, man. Like, it'd probably not be in a good spot, because it's allowed me to see life differently. It's allowed me to pour into my family differently, to raise my family differently. Having not been raised in a house, under God's word, was different, but allowing me to raise my kids under that word has changed not only my life, but their life. To see them give their life to Christ at such a young age. It took me a long time. And then I think when I did give my life to Christ, it was like just the thing to do. I think I was in line, we're at a summer camp, and it was like, what, oh, we're getting baptized, let's go. Like, I was there, I was for it, I understood what was going on, but it didn't resonate with me until way later in life. So yeah, to circle all that around, man, it's a true blessing that I have the faith that I do right now with God.
So he takes me down the hall to a closet. He says, come in here and sit down. We sit in this closet together. He talks to me about Jesus. And he prayed over me, prayed for me. And he talked to me about the jaw. And, to me, he's an angel. I'm convinced he was an angel. I don't know. He saved me. He saved me in that moment where my life was collapsing around me. And so he takes me out. He said, I don't want you in this room. You can't be in here anymore. You got to go outside. So I go outside. Harrison, they're bringing Harrison out on a stretcher. And he says, he yells out, "Tell my wife I love her." And Courtier says, "Shut up, Harrison. You're going to see her before we do." Oh, brother, that was hilarious. It got a laugh. It got a laugh. So I'm going. I go sit. I'm cleaning, blood off Zimmerman's saw. And Sergeant Major Booker walks up. He's like, "Marine." So I jump up, And he says, "What's going on? How are you doing?" I said, "Hey, I just want to get out there and kill these guys." And for Booker, at least as he's told it to me, that motivated him. I changed the course of my life, that one conversation. But yeah, end up...
How did that change the course of your life?
I ended up getting promoted. I mean, I didn't rate it. I didn't deserve it. I was no longer accepted. I was no longer allowed to spend time with my generation of Marines. So all of the dudes I was in boot camp SOI with, I had to break from. And then my seniors didn't accept me. So I wasn't a real corporal in their eyes, which completely understand. I didn't rate. And so I had to become a man on my own and figure that out and navigate. How do you be a leader of your peer group? Which is hard. It's a hard thing. And so a lot of self-teaching, and then there were several influential men who came alongside me. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Drawn, Sergeant Heredia, Sergeant Ford, Sergeant Hamby. Men who invested in me and developed me as a leader outside of my peer group and also not being accepted, by my senior Marines. So, that was the 13th. And so I went back. I remember writing in my journal that night. I wrote, "God forgive me. God forgive me for what I'm about to do in this city." And that was my rage and anger, because we were there with a pure heart. When I left on that deployment, on that patrol that morning, when we were on that patrol, I was hanging off the side of my Humvee, waving at every kid. I wanted to do good in this city, but they welcomed us with fire, And so, okay, if this is the route we go, then we'll go that route.
Well, at the time it didn't really, it didn't affect me. We were just trained young killers, little warriors, just, ready to blossom and do what we were trained to do as Marines, So many Marines before us never got that opportunity, to actually go to combat, and, we were ready for the burden, I think, and looking back on it, it's, at the time, it didn't really affect us much. We longed for it. That was what we wanted to be doing, And I would say it's affected me more over the years as a civilian, as a husband and father, and, just looking back on it, that's where the toll sets in. So.
Yeah, my best friend, Big Jeremy, I call him Big because he was like 6'3", 300 pounds. Not in the Marines, that's too big, but after. Everyone loved him. Not one person could ever say anything bad about him. He had a beautiful wife, a kid. His wife was pregnant. He had a great job, a house in little south of Texas. We were roommates in Texas for a little bit when I moved there. And, he had his demons, I guess. And, he took his own life a little over 2 years ago, and it's devastating. I think there was maybe 350, 400 people at his funeral, so he was very loved. And it's just, no one, if your life sucks, let's say, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but you don't have a job, you know, you have nothing going for you and you're miserable, everyone hates you, and then you take your own life, you think, I don't support it, but there's a logic to it. But with my friend, it was no debt, no, people loved him, he had a great job, a family, friends, and so like 1 + 1 didn't equal 2 to me, and it just, that's like the worst part is like I still think about it, like it doesn't make sense why someone like so loved and loving, he was a very loving person, could make such a stupid decision like that, and it's permanent. I mean, there's no coming back from suicide. It's there's no redos. You could always ask for help, start your life over, improve where you have to improve, but suicide, there's no second chances after that. So yeah, it's pretty hard to deal with.
You know, shortly after Todd getting hit, I couldn't sleep. You know, it's late, and you know we're back at our little platoon house, and I crawled up on the roof, and I'm just looking at the sky like my friends are getting maimed and dying, and you know I don't like how is there any way out of this? And you know, I heard that still small voice in my spirit, like, do you believe I have a plan for you? Yes, you know, Lord, I believe you have a plan for me. Do you believe you're here by accident? Yeah. No, I definitely believe I'm not here by accident. You know, growing up, I never wanted to be a firefighter. I never wanted to be a football player. I wanted to be in the United States Marine Corps and be in the infantry. You know, like I was that kid that dressed up as G.I. Joe for Halloween. You know what I mean? There wasn't another plan for my life. You know, and I believe that, you know, God had instilled that warrior spirit in me, like, you know, and so I had my little come to Jesus meeting on the rooftop of our house, like, you know, Lord, I surrender to your control, that you're the one that has brought me here, that this is not by accident, it's not by happenstance, and I surrender, Lord. I'm going to get up and give my all every day, and, you know, come what may, like, I'm going to drive on. Had a lot of hardship and loss. You know, I lost my, you know, father in 2009. You know, I've been divorced twice, and, you know, I'm not perfect, and, you know, I fail, and I feel like everything's dark and bleak and there's no way out. And I, you know, turn back to God and, you know, continue to believe that, you know, Lord, you know, you're in control. You've never left me hanging before. And I believe that, you know, there's no way out but up. One of my favorite verses is, you know, also the shortest verse, you know, Jesus wept, right? 2 words. You know, it seems so simple, you know, but, you know, Lazarus had just passed away. But before he passed away, you know, Jesus got word to come see him. What did he wait? Jesus waited 3 days until Lazarus is dead and in the tomb, and then he goes up, right? Jesus knew that Lazarus was going to die. Jesus knew that he was going to command him to come out of the grave and come out, right? But as Jesus is, you know, going to the grave, you know, his sister Mary comes up, and she's so broken and hurting, right, that she just lost her brother. And she comes up to Jesus, and she's broken and weeping. And Jesus met her, fully knowing that he's going to solve the problem. He's going to call him. You know, Lazarus is going to be okay. Jesus met her in that emotional brokenness, and he wept with her. You know, he didn't say, you know, just calm down. I'm going to take care of it. You know, he wrapped her in his arms, and he wept with her. You know, that to me, you know, addition to Jesus dying on the cross for us, but that just shows me the heart of Father God, that, you know, even though he has a plan and he's taking us through this, it doesn't stop him from meeting us right in our broken and being apart and weeping with you.
One thing I'm impressed with is when I went to Iraq, like, I liked all these guys that I served with. We were close. We were really good friends. But there was nothing proven in our relationships. And what was proven to me on April 6th is that we freaking love each other. Absolutely. And we are willing to die for each other. We are not willing to leave each other behind. And if all of hell's gates have been opened up and every demon is coming for us, it doesn't matter. Like, our Marines are coming to help us, no freaking doubt. And that is such an amazing thing. Here I am today, enjoying a 20-year reunion of this event with my brothers, and it's strange. There's no friendship that I've ever had that comes close to the friendship I have with these Marines. It is like an indescribable joy to see someone that I haven't seen in 5, 10, 15, some 20 years. But because we've gone through that hell together, like the hug and the joy and like some gay kind of kiss that some dude tries to plant on my neck, while he's hugging me, like, to be funny. It is absolutely incredible. And it's because we really freaking love each other. And I just think it's so special, like, I think God loves the Marine Corps.
Yud.
And I think God is very active in the Marine Corps. I've really seen that today. I've seen it before, but I've seen it today as well. Marines are warriors, and warriors are made to love God. Like, being a warrior is a very Christ-like thing, because the warrior king slays bodies, and he does it because he hates evil, and he loves the innocent. He loves the righteous and those that belong to him. He's willing to do violence on their behalf, and that love is so strong that it makes him do violence. And like, that love and violent act combined is what I see in my Marines, and it's so Christ-like. Well, like, when I talked about Derek in that conversation I had with him about his faith, when he was killed, as tragic as that was, not that he was a victim, he was a warfighter. He died doing what he signed up to do. But when I watched him die, I knew exactly where he was. He was with the king right then. And I had a peace about that. And I got more vocal with my faith after this. Jimmy Gentili, almost died, jaw blown out, carotid artery, teeth blown out. We came back. I mean, I was in the hospital with him. I'm like praying for him in the hospital. I'm calling his dad on the phone, trying to explain, here's your son's injuries right now. I'm this jacked up Marine in the hospital next to him. I'm the only guy even giving you information about him. That's how chaotic everything was at the time. But I started really pouring into Jimmy. My wife's father was a pastor at a church in Bakersfield, and we started taking Jimmy home I started taking him home with me on like Liberty on weekends, and my girlfriend's family is like taking Jimmy into their house. Adopted. They're like, "You're our son now. You're living with us." And Jimmy's staying there for like long periods of time. They're pouring into him. He's going to church. That dude, he ends up giving his life to Christ right here in the 5th Marines barracks. I've just, number one, I've seen more Marines give their lives to Christ because of tragedy, because of trauma, than they would if everything's going great, I don't really have stories about that when it comes to peacetime. But I do have stories of that when it comes to wartime and injury and death. That's when guys are giving their lives to Christ. And I've just seen God do amazing things. What I saw God do on the battlefield, like, number one, God protected us. We could have all been dead. God spared us. God sent 1st Platoon. God sent David Walter and Todd Boulding and Captain Bronzy. And it's told me that God is always with me. Like, I've gone through other crazy times in my life, and God has never let me down. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get killed. Doesn't mean I'm not going to die someday. I am. But God is always with me. And it blows my mind every time I go through some crazy event, whether it's Marine Corps or law enforcement, and I come through a situation, I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing right here could have happened. This could have resulted in my death, but it didn't, because God made this other thing happen. And the stories I hear from other Marines and my own anecdotal incidents like that, it's just mind-blowing, like how much God loves me, how much God actually pays attention to me, And I found this Psalm 116. I mean, number one, God covered my head in the day of battle, like Psalm 140 that I prayed. But Psalm 116 is there's a verse inside of it, and it says, I was low, and you bent your ear down to me, and you heard me. And I was like, I was low. I was in the prone. I was pretty low. I was hit by a grenade. I cried out to you, and God bent his ear down to me. God bent his ear down in an easy street in Ramadi and listened to a bunch of young Marines that were wounded and bleeding, their dead friend next to him, and he heard them. And that is very real. Like, King David wasn't telling a fable when he wrote Psalm 116. The Bible's real, Jesus is real, God is real, and God really cares about us. And that reality has pulled me through this. Like, I know guys go through stuff and they're thinking about ending their life. And it's like, number one, all your Marines love you, okay? And however much your Marines love you, which is a lot, it's nothing compared to how much God loves you. It's nothing compared, the plans that your Marines have to hang out with you are nothing compared to the plans that God has for your life, like for your actual benefit. I'm just blown away by who God is. Amen. And what he's done for my life, and blessing me with 3 beautiful children and a beautiful wife that puts up with me and the bull crap that I pull from time to time. God wants the best for us. That doesn't mean you get some like sugar-coated life, right? That you hear on like mainstream pastor channels or something. It's not like that. You go through rough times. You go through the valley of the shadow of death, but he is with you, and I will fear no evil because he's with me. I'll walk through the streets of Ramadi because he's with me. I'll walk through dark paths in life because he's with me. It never said it was going to be easy, but he's with me, and it's worth walking down it tomorrow and the next day, and being a father and being a husband and raising these people around you that look to you as a man, as a warrior in a society starved of manhood and warriors. They're looking to you to be the best for them. And like, that is what I have to do. And I'm not gonna succumb to the freaking demons so many veterans do, because I serve a God that casts demons out. So it's not gonna happen.